And welcome back. Here we go again, this time chapter 3. Chapter 3 is going to present concepts and analytical tools for assessing a company's external environment. We just touched on that a little bit at the end of week 2. So, attention here is going to center on this competitive arena in which the company operates. And when you combine that with the technological, social, regulations, other demographic influences in this macro environment that we're working in, these are going to act to reshape the company's future market arena as we go. We will be looking at these concepts for zeroing in on single business companies' external environment, the focus here this week. Now, strategic thinking begins with an appraisal of the company's external environment and also your internal environment, right? Where are you at in that regard? This becomes a basis for deciding on a long-term direction and developing your strategic vision, right? So you've got to understand these first. And then you move forward in your evaluation on the most promising alternative strategies and business models. And this is going to culminate in you choosing a specific strategy along the way. Now, when you assess a company's industry and competitive environment, you would want to ask yourself a series of questions. You could pause the slide and review it here, but things like, what strategic moves are your rivals even going to do? That's focused on the external environment, right? What are the key factors for competitive success? That might be internal and external. And what kind of strengths of competitive forces are present in the industry or even within your own company, right? That could be an internal aspect. And so, question 1 is, what are the strategically relevant components of a company's macro strategy, right? The macro environment encompasses this broad environmental context in which the company's industry is situated, and it includes this strategically relevant component over which the firm has really no direction or control, right? Can be a little frustrating. These are things that impact you but are outside of your control, right? And so there are some relevant factors that you could assess there on the slide. Now, this figure 3.1 from the book, these are the components of a company's macro environment, right? So the company is right there in the middle, and through this you're going to identify areas within the organization's macro environment, right? What about your suppliers? What about other firms that are competing with you? What about somebody that today isn't competing with you but is a new entrant into the market? I remember when the only TVs you could get were, one of the name brands, and then comes along this upstart called, I think it's LX. It was cheap, but it was super good quality, and it rapidly made a name in the market. Kia cars do the same. New entrant, right? Was somebody watching that? What about in electrical car world, Tesla? Other companies had electrical cars before Tesla, but here's this new entrant that said, we've learned and we'll do this better. And then you have the buyers who then get into that environment, that mystique that's created, and substitute products along the way also. Now, the even further outside of that environment becomes the social cultural forces, political forces, legal forces, environmental forces, and technical forces, which are going to form the basis for PESTLE. Okay, so we will talk a little bit about that. Now, the core concept then along the way is that this macro environment can use pestle analysis. And pestle analysis assesses the strategic relevance of the 6 principal components of that macro environment. And pestle stands for those components: political, economic components, social, technological, environmental, and legal forces. You saw that on this slide here on the outside ring. That's Pestle's attempt to describe those. So analysis of the impact of these factors is called pestle analysis, right? It's really just an acronym, and it serves to remind us of what the 6 components involve. As I mentioned, politics, economics, cultural, or social cultural, technological, the environment, and legal/regulatory issues. Okay. Now, question 2 then would be, how strong are the industry's competitive forces along the way? So each of the frameworks presented in this chapter that we're studying, pestle, the 5 forces, the driving forces, strategy groups, and competitor analysis, and key success factors, right? These all provide a useful perspective on how the industry looks at the future profitability. So putting all these things together is going to give us a rich and nuanced picture, right? And so the final step in evaluating the industry and the competitive environment that it's in is to use these results in each of the analysis performed to determine whether the industry presents the company with a profit opportunity, right? Which becomes critical to your own survival. So the 5 competitive forces affecting the industry are your bargaining power, substitute products that could be entered in, right? That's going to change the name of the game. That's a problem with Walmart. Not a problem with Walmart, but for anybody that wants to enter into the market, it's hard to beat a Walmart price. So a substitute is going to have to be really cheap, and that impacts quality, logistics, etc. Bargaining power. Walmart has tremendous bargaining power. When people come to them to sell them a product, if Walmart accepts it, it's guaranteed profit. So Walmart has done their own research, and they will tell you, supplier, what you will charge in their store if you want to, and they accept your product. It's interesting. The threat of new entrants into the market and rivalry among competing sellers. With Walmart, the rival for a long time was Kmart, but no more. It could not keep up for various reasons. Now, the 5 forces framework then comes to bear, right? And you see it here and also in the book in figure 3.2, because this holds that competitive pressures on the industry are impacting the development of the competition, right? You have new entrants that could come into the market. Remember when Southwest wasn't an airline, right? And yet, boom, here comes Southwest as a new entrant. And here's how it did it. It said we won't have these various airframes and the various mechanics needed to repair them and maintain them and buy new ones. We're going to have one fleet of the same aircraft, Boeing 737s, that streamline their maintenance, their logistics, which is their supply chain, etc., right? Really simplified the operation, and they were able to compete as a new entrant. So what about competition from competition that produces the substitute products? What about supplier bargaining and even the customer? What's the customer's power to bargain in this process? So the competitive force of the buyer bargaining power can be effective. Whether buyers are able to exert strong competitive pressure on the industry depends on a number of things, right? One is the degree to which the buyers have bargaining power, and 2 is the extent to which the buyers are price sensitive. Right? Buyers with strong bargaining power can limit an industry's profitability by demanding price concessions, better payment terms, and additional features and services that increase the members' costs. You'll see this all the time in the airline industry. When one airline cuts a price, now there's a price war, and the rest are cutting the price because the one airline felt the power or pressure of the buyer, right, and trying to increase their market share, and it drove the whole thing down. So buyer price sensitivity limits the potential profit of the industry members by restricting the ability of the sellers to raise prices without losing revenue due to lost sales. And that was just a good example of that in the airline market. So when is the bargaining power of buyers stronger? Well, whether buyers are able to exert strong competitive pressures on industry members, it depends on the degree to which they have the power, as I said, and the extent to which the buyers are price sensitive. So buyers are with strong bargaining power can limit the industry profitability, right? So buyers can gain leverage when their costs of switching between brands is low. When their large size allows them to demand concessions. So there are a lot of people demanding concessions. All right, you got to make the change. When there are, even if they're few in number, but control market access, right? If the buyer, a customer, is particularly important to the seller, then even though they're a small number, they can still control it, right? But what if there's a weak market, right? Versus demand, which can create a buyer's market, right? Because of the buyer's actions, etc. So there's some other examples listed on that slide. Now, Figure 3.3 here from the book summarizes the factors that determine the strength of the buyer power in an industry. Note that for the first 5 factors are the mirror image of those that determine the bargaining power of the suppliers. So there's a relationship there between these 5 factors of the buyer's bargaining power and of the suppliers. I think that's very interesting. Now, so the competitive force of substitute projects should not be underestimated. Companies in one industry are vulnerable to competitive pressure from the actions of companies in a closely adjoining industry. Whenever the buyers view the products of the 2 industries as a good substitute, right? I think that is something that you want to keep a close eye on when you're determining your strategy. Now, borrowing from figure 3.4, which are factors affecting the competition from these substitute products, right? So figure 3.4 depicts 3 factors that determine whether the competitive pressures from a substitute product are strong or weak. So competitive pressures are stronger from a substitute when there are good substitutes that are readily available and are attractively priced. That when buyers view the substitute as comparable or better in terms of quality, performance, or whatever other relevant attribute they're looking for. And also when the costs that the buyer incurs in switching is low. They're like, sure, why not? Doesn't cost me anything. I'll make that switch. I'll give it a try. I did that this weekend I usually fly Southwest Airlines. I thought, what the heck? I'll try Spirit. It was extremely inexpensive. I'm only going to Florida for 2 days. I don't need to carry a bag. I've got a backpack, couple things in it. It's all I need. Let's see if this works. I'm not sure it will, but I'll let you know. It's kind of neat and an application of what we're talking about for substitutes. Now, continuing then with the conversation, well, we'll take a break and we'll come back here after the break.